When we're looking now at discussing other variables, this is something that we only need for our excellence level, okay? So the idea behind this is this concept of observational studies versus experiments. Now, in an observational study, the researcher studies but does not change what happens. Another way of saying this is that the researcher would simply record what they see. So if I was doing an observational study on the work habits of students in my classroom, all I would do is simply record what I see. I simply record the fact that I see some students working, some students playing music, some students doing this, some people writing on the computer, some people are writing by hand. I'm simply recording what I observe. If I was measuring heights, I'm just measuring the height that I observe. Okay, that is an observational study, and most of the data we collect is observational. Experimental studies, this is more scientific methods that you use, and you may have covered this in either a science subject or in your geography area. Experimental studies are very specific type of studies. This is when the researcher makes an intervention. Okay, so what it means is that the researcher controls the conditions and decides which participant goes into which group and records what happens then. So that is we're going to cover what experiments are in our next topic, but this is the intro to it because we need to think about this in terms of other variables. So our data sets are just about always going to be observational studies, and if I simply observe something, I cannot prove that what I think is happening, the story that I've come up with for explaining the differences in this medians, I can't prove that that is the truth. What I've done is I've come up with a reasonable explanation for what I've seen. So we need to figure out what other possible explanations there might be. Okay, so it's like doing a brainstorming to think about other reasons, other connections. And here's a little brainstorm looking at a particular health topic. There's different aspects: sleep, stress, exercise, diet, help. There's all sorts of different aspects that connect to our health. And within each of those variables, there's a whole pile of other things that could connect back to our health and affect our health. That's what we're essentially looking for, is what are some of these other explanations. So in our rugby data, first of all start by looking at summarising our research so far. So far we've considered mainly the roles that forwards and backs have, and I've used that as my explanation for the differences in the median weights. Then I now want to go on and discuss the difference between observations and experiments. Well, our data is only observational. We haven't decided which player is a New Zealander, which player is a South African, which one is a forward, which one is a back. They have made that decision and are playing in the position that we observe them in. So this is an observational data set. And that means that these are possible explanations. We can't guarantee that these are the reasons why there's a difference in medians, and we've got to look at some other reasons that could explain the differences we found. Now I want to make some suggestions. So it could be that, for example, the selectors have focused on particular characteristics for a position. So it might be that the selectors, when looking for forwards, only look at players that are larger, rather than looking at the specific skill set. So rather than looking at how good they are at making tackles, or how good they are at playing the ball, or how fast they run, it could be that they're just only looking at simply their weight. Okay, so that's a possible explanation. And it could be also that the forwards tend to be the older players, and we know as we get older we tend to get slower. The younger we are, the faster we are, so it may be that the forwards are the older players. They've got more experience and more likely to weigh more because our metabolism slows down as we get older, and we don't eat as well as we get older. When we're younger, we put more energy and we don't get injured, so we keep our fitness levels up higher. So maybe the backs are the younger players and therefore are faster and weigh less. So that's another possible explanation for why they have this difference, why we found a difference in the median weights. So then, just kind of summarise and pull that all together, I've come up with a couple of alternative explanations. And it could be that the truth is actually some combination of any of those reasons. But the key idea is that there's always more than one possible explanation for a difference when we've got observational data. To be able to prove that the role that they play determines their median, we'd need to set up a formal experiment and have the researcher decide who plays in a forward role or a back role, and then observe the differences in their weights as a result. That's what we would need to do to be able to prove it. But in this case, we won't do that here. And I've just given a reference there at the bottom there of where we got the information from.